Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. Turkey says it will clear northern Syria of terrorists if Kurdish fighters don't withdraw by the ceasefire deadline agreed on with Russia. Speaking in Istanbul, President Tayyip Erdogan threatened to let refugees into European countries if they don't support his plans for a safe zone in Syria.
Turkey has once again reiterated its plan to create a safe zone in northern Syria to relocate 2 million Syrian refugees. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan urged the world to support Turkey's strategy.
Our expectation from the international community is to respect Turkey's sensitivities towards its border security and to provide support to our projects for the return of Syrian refugees in our country.
Russia is required to clear the safe zone's 30-kilometer area under the ceasefire agreement reached in Sochi this week. President Erdogan vowed Turkey would eliminate terrorists by itself if this doesn't happen.
If the terrorist organization continues to carry out its attacks from inside or outside the 30-kilometer long strip, we will chase them to wherever they flee and we will do whatever is necessary.
Meanwhile, Turkey rejected Germany's proposal to create an international safe zone in northeast Syria. It also rejected allegations by rights organizations that Syrians in Turkey were forcibly repatriated and treated.
In Iraq, 3 anti-government protesters have been shot dead and 17 others wounded in the southern city of Nasiriyah. Police say the protesters were torching a local official's house when the guards opened fire on them. Another 3 protesters were killed during clashes with police in Baghdad. This brings the last day's death toll to 48. The demonstrators are calling for an end to corruption and unemployment. Pakistan, China and Russia have called for the resumption of the Afghan peace talks between the US and the Taliban. The representatives met US Special Envoy for Afghanistan Zalmay Khalilzad in Moscow. In a joint statement, they urged the warring sides to reduce violence to create a conducive environment for talks. The participants said they expect all the sides to maintain a ceasefire during intra-Afghan talks. They called on the Afghan government and the Taliban to release prisoners at the beginning of negotiations. They also said Afghan soil should not be used to threaten the security of any other country. Earlier, President Donald Trump called off the negotiations with the killing of a US soldier in Afghanistan. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has said the military alliance is fully committed to peace in Afghanistan. Speaking to reporters in Brussels, he said NATO will continue to support the Afghan security forces with training and funding. He said funding the Afghan forces will aid the fight against international terrorism and create the conditions required for peace. Stoltenberg said Taliban need to demonstrate a real willingness to make real compromises to establish peace. He praised Afghan forces for the role they played in election security, saying the next step is to allow the election results to be counted. The people of Indian-occupied Kashmir have strongly rejected the Indian ruling Bharatiya Janata Party in local elections. Despite being the only party contesting the polls, the BJP came second in the occupied valley and Ladakh. The Hindu Nationalist Party only got 81 council seats in all 3 occupied regions, facing defeat by independent candidates. The independent candidates won 217 out of 307 seats. In 22 districts of occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the BJP only won 2 seats, while independents swept 19 seats. The occupied valley has been under curfew for the last 83 days. Twitter has blocked almost 1 million tweets on occupied Kashmir's situation on the behest of Indian government. A report by the Committee to Protect Journalists says Kashmir-focused tweets have been censored since August 2017. The report said India has sent 53 letters to Twitter seeking complete or partial ban on 400 accounts in last 2 years. The report says 90% of withheld accounts were from Kashmir-referenced group hosting over 920,000 tweets. The occupied valley is under New Delhi's curfew and communications blackout for the last 83 days. Another man has died in a detention camp for Indians declared foreigners by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government in Assam. India published the National Register of Citizens list in August, stripping almost 2 million people of Indian citizenship. 70-year-old Apalu Das had been in a detention camp in Lower Assam since July 2017. Officials say he was admitted to hospital earlier this month after his health deteriorated. Das's family says he was declared a foreigner despite having all the documents. The European Parliament has rejected a plan to step up research and rescue operations for refugees and migrants in the Mediterranean. The motion was defeated by 299 votes to 288 in favor. The Parliament voted against the resolution, urging member states to improve efforts to rescue people from drowning in the sea. The majority of the votes against the motion came from the Parliament's largest centre-right group. Earlier, the UN said 18,000 migrants have died in the Mediterranean since 2014. In the United States, a court has ordered the Justice Department to hand over an unredacted copy of Robert Mueller's Russia investigation to the House committee. The ruling has underlined the legality of the Democratic-led impeachment inquiry against President Trump. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi welcomed the order, calling it a blow to President Trump's attempt to put himself above the law. The ruling will allow House investigators to see portions of the report involving Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with the Russians. The judge has given the Justice Department until next week to provide the blacked out material from the report. The Justice Department argued the redacted information cannot be disclosed as it contains highly confidential material. The judge strongly disagreed and subpoenaed the redacted portions of the Mueller's report. The U.S. has released alleged Russian spy Maria Butina from a Florida prison after she served most of her 18-month sentence. Butina, who was convicted of conspiring to influence U.S. conservative activists, has been deported to Russia. Butina's attorney, Robert Driscoll, said she was released from the prison for her good behavior. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has welcomed Butina's release. The Russian pleaded guilty in December last year to one count of conspiring to act as a foreign agent. Voters in Argentina will head to the ballot box tomorrow in the presidential election. Opinion polls show center-left candidate Alberto Fernandez holding a 20-point lead. Fernandez defeated President Mauricio Macri in an August primary, sparking a market crash. Former President Cristina Kirchner is running mate for Fernandez, who is convincing voters that he has a plan to reboot the economy. To avoid a runoff, the leading candidate needs to secure 45% of the votes. Voters will be choosing between 6 candidates. In Chile, almost 1 million anti-government protesters had converged in Santiago in the country's largest ever protest march. Following a week of deadly protests, demonstrators are demanding economic reform and President Sebastián Piñera's resignation. Details in this report.
Waving national flags, banging pots and bearing placards, protesters streamed to the streets in Santiago, urging political and social change. Many sang popular resistance songs from the 1970s, the era of Augusto Pinochet dictatorship. Protests that began last week over a rise in public transport fares has boiled into riots, killing 19 people and injuring hundreds. Authorities have deployed 20,000 soldiers using tear gas and water cannons to disperse the demonstrators.
I think the first thing the president has to do is to get the military off the street and change the cabinet, and that there are conscious people making statements to the country that are consistent with what people want.
Though serious incidents have decreased in recent days, the protests show no sign of ending.
The unity never before the Chilean people had protested in years of democracy in this way. You see that there are people from all kinds, elders, children, youth, workers and students, all united in the same cause.
In a tweet, the Chilean president Sebastián Piñera says he has listened to the people's message, saying, "We have all changed."
More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with Indus. Welcome back. Bolivia says it is open for the review of its presidential election results by the Organization of American States and the European Union. Bolivia's electoral tribunal head, Maria Eugenia, has invited outside bodies to audit the electoral process after violent clashes erupted over the vote. The OAS has called on Bolivia's election tribunal to hold the second round runoff vote between Morales and his top challenger, Carlos Mesa. The recommendation has been supported by the EU, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, and the US. The Electoral Tribunal declared President Evo Morales' victory in the first round of the election held last Sunday. The opposition has protested the election results, claiming they are fraudulent. Thousands of people blocked the streets and lit fires in cities across Bolivia, calling for their vote to be respected. A Hong Kong court has banned people from disclosing the personal details of police officers and their families. The ruling has been made to prevent protesters from attacking police personnel. Police say many of its officers have had personal details linked online, which has led to harassment of their family members. Hong Kong's court was approached asking for an injunction preventing people from publishing personal information. The court has granted an injunction for 14 days. In months of protests, demonstrators have attacked police with petrol bombs, rocks. Police have responded with tear gas, water cannon, and rubber bullets. The United Nations says nearly 1 million people in South Sudan have been impacted by severe flooding. In a report, the organization said rains are likely to continue for another 4 to 6 weeks, putting more people at risk. The UN said severe floods have devastated large areas in the country since July. Floods have also forced thousands of people to leave their homes. The report added that internally displaced refugees and their host communities have limited access to healthcare facilities. The UN has anticipated considerable damage to crops, land, and livestock that will exacerbate the ordeal for months to come. In Japan, 10 people have died in flooding and mudslides caused by torrential rains. Hundreds of residents are stranded at evacuation centers because rail and bus services have been suspended in northeastern parts of the country. Authorities say Shiba Prefecture has recorded the equivalent of a month's rain in just 12 hours. They want more landslides and flooding despite the storm moving away from Japan. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has called for an all-out rescue effort, relief work, and damage assessment. The region is facing its third heavy rainstorm in 6 weeks, just 2 weeks after the powerful typhoon Hagibis killed 88 people. In the U.S., wildfires raging in California have forced over 50,000 people to leave their homes. Officials say a number of buildings in the city of Santa Clarita have been destroyed. Heavy winds and warm weather fed the blaze overnight as it devoured parts of the city. The local weather department says another burst of high winds is expected over the weekend. A volcano on the French Indian Ocean island of Reunion has erupted for the 5th time this year and spewed lava for the 2nd time this month. Details in this report.
The Le Patron de la Fournaise is said to be one of the most active volcanoes in the world. The volcano on Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean began throwing up lava on Friday and continued into the weekend. It produced a spectacular light show for those who ventured out.
Du coup, là, on est dans l'enclos.
So we're in the enclosure by the lava road. We are 10 meters from the flow of lava. You can feel the heat. We are getting tanned by the heat.
On sent la chaleur, on est en train de bronzer.
Many describe the experience as amazing and something they would remember for life.
Ça fait un peu peur.
It's a bit scary, like the apocalypse. It is magnificent. It's great.
C'est génial.
In the last 6 years, the volcano has erupted 15 times, attracting thousands of spectators on each blowout.
Video games are generally thought of as an entertainment for boys and young men. But one group of women coders want to use the medium to teach girls to smash obstacles. What makes this story truly special is where these women are from, patriarchal Afghanistan. These young women are part of an after-school training program called Code to Inspire in Herat. Here, they learn tech skills and create educational games and apps for Afghan girls.
My main goal as a game and app developer is to make as many educational games for the children of my country as possible, so that they learn and become educated faster through games.
The game Afghan Hero Girl has been their most successful venture yet. Its protagonist is a princess in a green hijab who leaps around a crumbling castle in a quest to defeat an evil wizard.
One of our most successful games is the Afghan Hero Girl game. We made this game in 6 months with 12 girls working on it. Through this game, we want to show that girls may have problems, but like the character in the game, they can jump or destroy the obstacles in their lives and eventually reach their goal.
Women's rights and girls' education have made significant gains in Afghanistan over the past 2 decades, but the country still has a long way to go. 1,000 schools were shut at the end of 2018 due to fighting between the Taliban and the government in Kabul. This deprived 500,000 children of their right to education, mostly girls. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned with us. Lows and the highs of the business world. The U.S. Treasury says the government's budget deficit has climbed nearly $1 trillion in the 2019 fiscal year. The fiscal deficit jumped by 26% to over $900 billion, which is the highest since 2012. The U.S. Treasury says in the wake of Republican-led tax cuts, spending has outstripped tax receipts. Earlier this year, Congress passed a 2-year budget deal backed by President Donald Trump. The General Motors workers have ended a 40-day long strike after approval of a new contract. The United Auto Workers Union strike cost General Motors around $2 billion. The strike was the longest in car industry since 1970. It began in September with the end of the union's contract with the car maker. The company has agreed to a 3% wage increase, maintaining health benefits and removing a cap on profit sharing with employees. The new agreement also includes a signing bonus and creates a clear path to permanent staff status for temporary employees. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you may follow us on social media at Indus.news.